Dana, welcome to the Power Within You podcast. It's really lovely to have you on with me today. Thanks so much for joining.
Thank you so much for having me. I always love talking on podcasts. So
it's a great place, right? To just have a chat, meet people new, and explore stuff that you don't really normally talk about, to be fair. Yes. And that's why I was super excited to have you on the podcast. I couldn't wait to speak to you because we were talking before we kind of recorded about your experience, and that I was doing this MSc in psychology, neuroscience, mental health, and that I've come across how, the gut and nutrition affects your mental health as well. Yeah. And I was blown away by that information. I was like, what? Yeah. That's amazing. It just makes complete sense when you think about it. Right? Yeah. It does. Yeah, completely. But before we get into that, I would love to know about you, your background, your journey, and how you got to this place of being a nutritional therapist.
Amazing. Thank you so much. So I got my final qualification about 1.5 years ago, but my first degree was in accounting, and I ended up as a consultant at one of the big 4 consulting firms. Mm-hmm. But I would say that my interest in health and well-being started when I was about 16 years old. I was a chubby teenager. I didn't like the way that I looked, and I decided that I needed to make a change. So I did, and I started reading up information about how to become healthy, because I thought if I become healthy, then surely I'll be able to lose the weight. I was playing hockey 6 days a week, so there's no ways that I could go on any of the dieting things where you had to restrict your calories and restrict your intake. So, yeah, I think that's where it really was sparked. I read articles about how to become healthy, and I was just so interested in the information, like learning about B vitamins and how important they were for energy. And I was like, okay, great. Where are the B vitamins? How can I get them in my body so that I can support my hockey? Then I was going through exams, O levels and A levels, and I was thinking, well, how can I support my brain function? And I read up and I learned that, again, B vitamins and omega-3 are important nutrients to have to help support brain function. So it was learning about how I could use food to support whatever I was going through, and to support my health in general, not just about weight loss. And so that's where the journey began. And at university, I think I was one of the ones that always used to cook, and friends used to come over to me for their vegetables. And the passion just really grew from there. And again, I would just consume articles and consume magazines talking about health and well-being. And when
That's amazing. That's amazing.
Yeah.
It's so, do you know what I say? It's so rare for a young person to actually do that research, to actually make you actively look and see what you need for your body. Yeah. That's incredible. I don't think lots of people do that, to be fair. I guess so, right? Your interest is firmly in that area, for sure.
Yeah, but it was only when I moved back to the UK in 2013 and I met a nutritional therapist, and when she was telling me what she did, I said, that is absolutely my dream job. And literally, I think the next week I had enrolled in a college. I had to do A-level biology and chemistry because I hadn't done that at school. So I had to do A-level biology and chemistry before I could enter into the BSc. So I studied from 2014 until 2021.
I get the shivers thinking about A-levels anyway, but doing biology and chemistry. How did you, was it something, well, whilst you got a job? Yeah. I still remember doing my A-levels. I feel like it was harder than my actual BSc though. I don't know if it was true or it was just me. I just found it quite more difficult, but amazing that you went, actually, that's how motivated you were to actually do this degree as well, which is incredible, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I had 2 children throughout my degree as well. So I think I was the only mum in the MPT group that used to go home to study in the children's lunch sleep.
That's amazing. And I love that you played hockey as well. I was a hockey player for 10 years.
Oh, amazing.
And it makes me think I should have taken omega-3. My back is screwed now after playing hockey for so many years. So I should have definitely looked after my body a bit more, basically. And I think that those sorts of things would have helped, for muscles and that sort of stuff as well.
Yes, absolutely. But there's no reason why you can't start doing it now, right?
That's true. Never too late, right? It's never too late. It's very true. Yeah. Okay, we need to talk afterwards about what that is. So tell me what you did. So you did the BSc in nutritional health. And that basically took you on this journey. So did you then give up work and then, pursue this career?
So I was fortunate enough after having my second son to not have to go back to work. And I wanted to start working in the industry. I wanted to start learning on the job. And so I joined up with a nutritional therapist, and I offered what's called dietary education advice. So we had run a program where she would do the nutrition evidence-based stuff, talk about the science, talk about the physiology. And then the same clients would see me, and I would specifically only talk about food because that's what I was qualified to do at that time. And we were trying to break into the corporate market then as well, because mental health was being spoken about a lot more. And I knew from firsthand experience of being in one of the top 4 consulting firms that not many people were considering the nutrition element or the nutrition science element to our mental health. Yes, they would get people in to talk about sleep or to talk about meditation or do yoga stuff, but nobody was talking about food, and nobody was talking about the physiology and how the body actually works. So we were trying to break into that corporate market as well. And then kind of COVID hit, and I focused on doing my dissertation, and I ended up doing my dissertation on the link between stress, gut health, and mental health.
Wow, amazing.
And so that really is where my passion lies at the moment, in supporting people with that trifactor of stress, gut health, and their mental health.
Yeah, do you know what? It's interesting, and I think about this now. I actually did a coaching session yesterday, but I kicked off the year with like mental fitness, basically, like just to kind of think about how you can get your brain, strong and like, practice stuff. But you know what? I'm missing a trick because I didn't put anything about nutrition in there. I put mindfulness, I put in, journaling, sort of having doing daily reflections, gratitude, exercise, movement. And actually, I should be putting in nutrition as well, because that is super important. And I don't know why I forget about this, because I've been learning about it and, being able to study about it, but I keep forgetting about it. And I think it's because it's people haven't heard of that. It's quite new to people to understand how their gut affects their mental health.
Yes. Yeah. And it's not only the gut, although food has the biggest impact on the gut and the gut microbiome, but it's also about the nutrients that we're eating.
Sure.
And I think especially in the UK, so I'm not British myself, I come from Zimbabwe, but in the UK, I find that people see food as fuel. Like, I just need to get through. It's breakfast, I'm hungry, I'm going to eat some cereal and get on with my day.
Pepper Pops, the best. High nutrition.
Give me the box, and then 2 hours later I'm going to be digging in the biscuit because I'm hungry.
Yeah.
We don't see food as a source of nutrients, but that is how our bodies work. Our bodies don't work by magic. We need nutrients for the body to perform the processes that they need to perform for us to feel well and function well.
Absolutely. And so, when I was kind of reading about, I was reading your website earlier, and you talked about a rainbow of food. What does that kind of mean? Because I was like, what does a rainbow food mean, basically?
So the advice that we give as nutritional therapists is that we should be eating all of the colors of the rainbow on a daily basis, because each of the colors is full of different nutrients that support the body. All the colors of the rainbow mean that you're eating different foods as well. And we know that different foods, or the amount of diversity that you've got in your diet, correlates to the amount of diversity you've got within the gut microbiome. So we're wanting people to eat all the colors of the rainbow, mainly to get that wide range of food in, but also to get that wide range of nutrients in.
That makes sense. And if we go back to, like stress, like, because you do a dissertation on stress and the gut biome and mental health, how would you explain the process of what happens in your body? Like, is it a way we can understand what happens?
Yes, absolutely. And you always use Paleolithic times, because that is how our stress response, that's why our stress response activates in the way that it does. So if somebody is experiencing stress, and that can be an actual stress or it can be a perceived stress. So if somebody has got anxiety, that is stress for that person. And when we are in a mode of stress, it's the autonomic nervous system that is activated, which means it's automatic. We don't have to think about it. And it's the sympathetic nervous system, or what I like to call the get up and go, the fight and flight. And what happens is the body primes itself to enable us to get away from the danger, because we want to survive as a species. We want to survive as a person. So that stress could be an attack from a different tribe, or it can be a saber-toothed tiger that's coming in. So the body needs resources to be able to get away from that danger. So things shut down, like digestion, because it's not essential to digest our food. Digestion actually is quite an energy-intensive process. So 500 mils of blood goes to your digestive system once you've eaten to digest that food. So it's quite energy-intensive. But if you're trying to run away from a tiger, you need to conserve that energy for your heart, lungs, and muscles for you to be able to run away from the danger or fight the danger. So digestion actually shuts down, and that has a large impact on the gut as well. But stress directly impacts the gut microbiome. So there's been studies done on medical students going through exams, and they can see that specific species of bacteria in the large intestine are reduced in those times of stress.
Wow.
So it's the body priming itself to react to the stress, and that is at the detriment of our gut and our gut microbiome. And in those processes, we also deplete certain nutrients. So it's important to understand how stress impacts mental health. One way is through the gut and the gut microbiome, but the other way is when we are stressed, we deplete our B vitamins and we deplete magnesium, as well as iron and a few other nutrients that are key for our mental health. But to be able to produce our neurotransmitters, so serotonin and dopamine, we need things like B vitamins and magnesium to be able to create those neurotransmitters. So if you're in a state of stress, you're depleting those nutrients, which means that you don't have the nutrients to be able to support your serotonin and your things like GABA, which is your anti-anxiety hormone, and dopamine, which is the reward center.
Wow. I mean, there's a lot going on inside of us that we just don't realize, right?
Yeah.
And, you know, we don't know. I think it's like we think of one way of trying to relieve stress. Obviously, some people just go the opposite way and probably junk out, eat, you know, bad foods, you know, maybe drink too much, you know, that sort of stuff as well. You know, in your experience with working with clients as well, like what's your approach and what sort of results and differences have you seen? If you don't mind sharing a couple of case studies.
Absolutely. So when I see a client who's having a mental health condition, I do a full health history taking, but you've got to understand all of the elements that make up our health, and that is genetics, any past experiences, any stresses that person is exposed to at the moment, what they're eating, how they're moving, how they're sleeping, because all of those elements play a role in how we think, feel, and perform. So it's about understanding, okay, what elements can we shift and change to help support your health going forward? Often in mental health conditions, people have gut-related symptoms as well. So gas, bloating, fast transit times, slow transit times. So either that constipation or diarrhea, or shifting between both. IBS type symptoms. So often I will look at the gut as well. And I like to use what's called functional testing if people have the budget and appetite for it, especially if they're having gut-related symptoms, because I've actually done a number of stool tests on my mental health clients, and one of them, there's a specific species of bacteria that person was completely missing, and that is correlated to mental health conditions. And just showing her those results made her cry, because she was like, so it's not just in my mind, it's not just me. And I said, no, this bacteria has been studied and shown to be correlated to people who have low mood and low mental health. And it's because of the gut and the role that the gut microbiome has to play. And then when supporting people through their journey, yes, it's about all of those elements. How can we get you to sleep a little bit better or a little bit longer? What
Yes.
about movement? Do you have movement in your day? How are you moving? Because some people can move too much.
Really? That's interesting. Tell me more about that.
And again, I mean, there's an impact on the gut microbiome. Everything's got an impact on the gut microbiome, but the amount that you move, the exercise that you do can impact your gut microbiome. So you can move too much movement or too much exercise is a stress on your body. And then we talk about food. So what foods can we eat to support your mental health? And that will be including things like omega-3s in your diet, loads of B vitamins to give you those raw materials for your neurotransmitters. And we'll talk about any genetic predispositions. And then I'd also like to support with supplements, because we can eat the best food that we want to in this world, but our soils are very, very depleted. And if you have something like stress added into the picture, you won't be getting enough nutrients just from your diet alone. So if you have stress, you are depleting your B vitamins and your magnesium, and I'll often supplement those back into the diet to support somebody to go from a place of being low, having depression and anxiety, to a place of, okay, I can actually face the day. Okay, I can actually now go for a walk, because before I didn't even have the energy to get out the door.
You know, and it must be incredible if people see that change, you know, to actually start seeing that they got more energy, they can move more, they can like do and feel better mentally and actually do more in their life. It's interesting because so, you know, at the moment, there's lots of allergies out there, right? So people are intolerant to stuff. I did a York test, I think, the other day, just to kind of, and I was like, what? And it confused me a little bit, I have to say.
Let's chat.
We need to have a chat for sure. But there are people with intolerances that cause bloating, or they got the allergic to gluten, or they're lactose intolerant, or they, you know, I get bloated from red peppers, for example, which I know are a great source. How do you balance all of that though? Like, is it something in your body that's rejecting the food and you have to get the food right and then it stops? I mean, I think it's confusing people. Like I remember having a coaching session, we all started relating to antihistamines. Like we eat something and something starts itching and then we take antihistamine. Lots of people are just doing that nowadays, you know?
Oh, yes.
It's complicated.
It's very complicated. It really is. And there's lots of information out there, but a lot of it is conflicting as well, right?
Yes.
So that's why speaking to somebody like myself who has the background knowledge is really useful to try and understand what's going on. So I don't love the use of food intolerance testing. I think the starting point of the problem is twofold almost. So stress has an impact on the gut and the gut microbiome and how we digest our food. So if we are in a state of stress, you're not producing enough stomach acid, which means that you're not digesting your food sufficiently, which means that undigested food goes through to the large intestine and it can cause an imbalance of bacteria within the gut. If you're in a state of stress, you also have potentially some form of leaky gut.
Yes.
If you've got leaky gut, particles, those undigested particles, pass through from the digestive system into the bloodstream, and that's where your immune system is housed. And your immune system is like, I don't know what this is, shouldn't be here, let's launch an immune response.
Yeah,
and that's when you get that histamine type reaction. But the other thing is, we're eating the same foods day in, day out. And they are not beneficial for our health, especially things like gluten. And I'm not saying to people, don't eat gluten, but what I am saying to people is don't eat gluten 3 times a day, every day, because gluten upregulates a hormone in the gut called zonulin, which is responsible for opening and closing those tight junctions within the gut. So gluten, to some extent, can cause, for at least for an hour post-meal, does cause leaky gut.
Wow, this is like, I'm fascinated. Like, I'm just taking notes as we speak. I'm just like, need to do this. But gluten is like in breads and pastas, right? Mainly.
Pastas, crackers, cookies, cakes.
All the stuff that you love.
Some cereals as well will contain gluten.
Yeah, exactly. So it doesn't matter if you know, because I think it's celiac disease, isn't it? Like where you have I guess it for everyone that it has that effect, gluten, right, on every person. Yeah. So I think it's a great thing to be aware of for sure, and what great advice as well. Amazing. Yeah, I think it's, and I was reading about, because I suffer from psoriasis, which is an autoimmune disorder. I've had that since my 20s, but I realised of being able to manage my diet better. I'm managing completely now, So when I go back to the doctor, they're like, oh, you manage it really well. And I was like, yeah, I think it's because I'm being mindful about what I put in my body.
Yeah.
They're like, oh, and like, yeah. And I'm like, you should be telling me this, not the other way around. Why didn't you tell me that 20 years ago?
Well, because doctors diagnose and they treat, right? They don't tell you how to prevent.
Yes.
They are great at diagnosing and treating. And if you don't have psoriasis, then they don't, they can't treat you for psoriasis, and they can't really say what's best. I must say, with people like Dr. Rangan Chatterjee on the socials these days, I think there's a lot more awareness in GPs, and a lot more GPs are going down what we call the functional medicine route, which is prevention and optimal health, rather than here's a pill for the diagnosis that I've been able to give you. Absolutely.
I have one more question about food. It's like a personal conversation between me and you, by the way. It's interesting when you're sort of listening to other podcasts, and like, it's because I listen to a lot of mental health stuff and neuroscience and that sort of stuff, and sometimes I advertise like green powders, for example. Is there any benefit in taking supplements such as green powders or other things? I know you said there was benefit in addition to food, taking supplements. Is that something people should consider generally?
Yes, I think so. I think where people fall short is there's a lot of marketing gimmicks out there, and there are a lot of expensive green powders out there as well. If you've got the money to spend on it, then great. I think people need to do a little bit more research and not just go into high street supplement stores and buy 2-for-1 supplements, because not all supplements are made equal. The supplement industry is not regulated. So it's about the quality of supplements that you're taking, and it's about the reason you're taking it. Is this a catch-all so that I'm supporting myself because I may not be getting all the nutrients that I need in my diet? Am I taking something because somebody said this is good for this ailment that I have? Sure, take it, but be mindful of it for a month or two. And if it's not working, stop taking it.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you know what, though? I do think everyone should be seeing nutritional therapists. I think there's benefit for everyone to have, because even though you read about, you learn about, unless I speak to someone like you, or unless we hear from someone like you, we don't really understand it. We don't really understand what it is. And like you said, we're creatures of habit, aren't we? We kind of just eat the same thing every day because we know what to eat and how to make it and that sort of stuff as well. Whereas if we're not bringing in that diversity of food, then we're not really helping ourselves. It's interesting, such interesting conversation. I mean, for you and your hope, like you have this, you're doing these amazing things working with clients. What would you like to do, like going forwards over the next sort of year or two? What would you like to impact the most, do you feel?
I'm wanting to break into the corporate market, actually. So I come from a corporate background working for one of the big four. And like I said, I really believe that there is a gap in the market in the mental health space within organizations. So a lot of organizations are supporting their employees with many different programs around health and wellness, and specifically around mental health. But I still believe that there is this massive gap as to where nutritional therapy comes in, where we explain the physiology of the body, what's going on, and how to support yourself. So yes, you can bring in the mindfulness and the meditation and the yoga and the sleep, and all of those elements are important. But if you're missing the food element, or if you're not managing your stress properly, you're not going to be able to support your mental health in the best way possible. And you will end up with burnout or just a huge amount of stress that you can't cope with. So I'm really wanting to make an impact in the corporate space, but gosh, anyone who will listen to me, I will talk to them about health and well-being. I actually said that to my husband once. I think everybody needs a nutritional therapist.
It's a line. We need to get that phrase out there, basically, don't we? And that's your marketing line.
Yes.
No, but it's so true. We just grab and go, like, especially in the corporate. I mean, obviously, you and I know, right? If you've got a minute for lunch,
Yeah.
You just go out and try and grab something that is easy to eat. And I'm just like mortified about sandwiches I ate.
Yeah.
And what was in them, right? Like as well. Like, and I'm just like, God, I ate so many. I love sandwiches though, still.
Yeah.
I do really like sandwiches, but like, I don't know what was in them, you know, and I'd have maybe a packet of crisps and a drink, and that was it. And then for tea, and you have biscuits, you know, in the afternoon to keep stuff going, right?
Well, exactly, because by 3 o'clock you're crashing again.
By 3 o'clock you're crashing again, exactly. Yeah. But the thing is, right, there's something there, because I really want to, you know, when you think about, you know, talking about your health, you talk about emotions, you talk about, you know, stuff that makes you feel good. And you were so young when you started to explore it. And I just feel like, you know, there could be opportunity as well, like, and there should be opportunity for young kids to learn about this stuff, right? At schools, and understanding what they should. Obviously, it's their parents that are feeding them as well, so it has to be like a combined process. But even like what schools are feeding the kids, you know, like, and that changing as well, you know. So I know Jamie Oliver did like loads of stuff around, you know, that stuff, but I just don't think it's changed so much. And I think, again, people just try and, you know, no fault of anyone, but you're trying to educate the kids, get them to do the exams and like get through school. But there's no thought, I suppose, on what's going on with them and their bodies, because obviously anxiety and depression is rising significantly in young people.
Yes. Yeah.
Right.
It's huge in the young population. Absolutely.
Yeah. And do you work with any young people currently? Is it something, you know, that it's...
I have in the past worked with teenagers, so yes. It's a hard nut to crack there, because they do have a lot of anxiety around food as well, and their diet generally isn't very good.
Yeah.
And that's where supplements play a really large role if the diet is not good. But I think you're right. I think there's a massive piece of education that can happen in that population. With regards to schools and school meals and things, I've tried to influence my school and to bring in more things, but they're constrained by budgets as well.
Absolutely. That's the thing. That makes me feel really sad, because there's so much more they could do, but they're tied to a curriculum that they have to go through and get the kids through as well, right? So the teachers get burnt out, and the kids have the anxiety and stress. It's like this bubble, isn't it, really? But it feels overwhelming to know how much work there is to do in the world. But like I think it's people like you who are making that step inwards to kind of educate and help and support people with their nutrition, because we just don't, like you said, we just don't think about it. We think about it as fuel, and you know, and I think that attitude needs to change, and I think it will help. So not just mental health, but other, you know, perhaps physical ailments that you have. You must have, you know, even though you're helping mental health, have you seen it help other stuff around that as well? Yeah. But no, interesting stuff. I always like asking this question, and it's about your own sort of journey and that sort of stuff as well. But I'd like to know, Dana, how do you find sort of the power within you to kind of manage your own mental health now and for the future? What do you do?
Very good question, and it's a learning curve for me as well. I feel a lot of stress at the moment, and that's where I'm trying to put the most emphasis, is trying to manage that stress, because I know the impact that it has. Sorry. So, yeah, the things that I do are pretty holistic. I eat very well, of course, with all the knowledge. It's a side effect of my profession. So I do eat very well. I do focus on sleep, and I've started to bring in meditation myself, because I know the stresses that I am exposed to, and I am at risk of doing too much often. I exercise a fair amount, sometimes too much. So it's about understanding what stresses I'm exposed to and managing them in the best way possible. So I have started to try and introduce a rest day and meditation on my things that I'm working on this year, to try and combat the effects of stress that I'm under.
You know what? It's fascinating to know about the movement. My other half is training for triathlon, half triathlon at the moment, and she's moving every day, and probably too much, and getting sick as well. Like, you know, it ends up getting colds and like whatever it is. But now I'm going to say, listen, you need to chill out a little bit and relax, because we didn't realise, I wouldn't have known that, you know, exercise can have a negative effect on you.
Yes. And I'm not immune to that, right? So I did the London Marathon last year.
Amazing. How was that?
Oh, such an amazing experience. But my body is still pretty broken from it. And I lost so much hair. And so I ended up doing a thyroid test on myself. And I know from the amount of training that I was doing, I put myself into hypothyroidism. But because of the knowledge that I have, I knew what test I needed to run on myself. I was showing symptoms, which was, I was actually gaining weight. So I don't know if anyone else who's done the marathon has gained weight. But I gained weight and I lost hair. And so I knew it was my thyroid that was affected.
And the thing is, right, having that self-awareness. So would you do the marathon again?
I would like to say yeah.
You have to train for it differently, I'm assuming, right? Like you don't want to put too much stress on your body. Even said you I mean, it's intense. Yeah. It's intense, isn't it? But like, it's amazing that you did that. So congratulations for doing that as well.
Thank you.
But I think those are all wonderful ways to kind of manage yourself, and it shows that you're yourself doing an holistic type of treatment for you, and being able to like work on all aspects of your body, which I think is a beautiful thing. Yeah. So if people want to get in touch with you, how could they contact you?
Fabulous, thank you. My website is www.dc-nutrition.co.uk. Feels like a very big mouthful. But I'm happy for people to email me directly, which is Dana, Dana, at dc-nutrition.co.uk. I'm also on LinkedIn, and I am on Instagram as dchappersnutri. So those are a few ways for people to...
Excellent. Well, I mean, I've learned just in the half an hour that we just speak, I've learned so much. It's amazing. It's eye-opening, and it's really wonderful to have you on the Power Within You podcast. So Dana, thank you so much for joining me. I really appreciate your time.
Thank you so much for having me. I've loved it.
Thank you. Hey. It stopped.